So you decided to take up running and you want to be able to run a 10K, a half marathon, or a marathon.
Which way?
And you want to be able to run faster. Now, I'm sure you've been like me and you've looked up online some of these online calculators to calculate how you're going to achieve this. But then you start running and then you start going through the cycles of trying to get faster, trying to improve. Whether you're running more, whether you're running fast all the time, but then when you, on like race day, you look at your pace, you look at your time, and you didn't achieve what you wanted. And you feel like you didn't reach your potential. Something wasn't right. And you're wondering, how the heck am I gonna be able to run faster? Hi, I'm David, I'm the plant-powered runner, and I've been using slow running to be able to get faster over time using heart rate training as my preferred training method. Now, that being said, I've also been able to go from couch all the way to an ultra marathon and finish off in a pretty good time in about 11 and a half hours, which is fabulous to run a 50 miler. Now, 50 miles is a long way, and I was able to knock off 3 minutes per kilometer off of my pace training using heart rate training, using low heart rate, slow running to build an aerobic base. Building an aerobic base is fantastic. However, your body will adapt. And this comes to the first point I want to make. Your body adapts. And when it adapts to running and you don't start seeing those results anymore, you're going to start to question whether you're doing something wrong. Whether maybe, you're not getting enough sleep, or maybe you're just burned out. What I will tell you is that those could be valid points. However, what I find is when I run and I'm building an aerobic base. Look, there's a couple of ways that you can build your aerobic base. You can use the Maffetone method. You could go ahead and use heart rate reserve. I've made a couple of videos on these. You can see them right here up in the cards, but maybe watch that later on. Maybe I'll talk about that later on. But right now, what I want you to focus on is, what is your goal? What do you want to achieve in the next 6 months? We're going into the fall now, okay? So you have time to build a really good, strong aerobic base. Get a real good grip on this. Because there's not a lot of races kind of going on at the tail end of the year, and then maybe in the springtime, you want to be able to run a couple of races and do really well. You want to see what you can do. Or maybe you're older and you just want to be able to wake up in the morning and not feel injured, even though you didn't do anything. Okay, I joke about that, but it's true, right? I don't know if you're like me, but sometimes you wake up and go, how did I just get injured? I didn't do anything. And it's very frustrating to go through that feeling. Now, to be able to run faster, to be able to run longer, to be able to see some pretty cool running results, what I would suggest is a couple of things. And there's a couple of things that I would kind of point out as to why you're not seeing results or what's going on with your training. I'm not a coach. I'm self-taught. I go through the motions. I'm always experimenting on myself to see what works, what doesn't work, how I feel after a run. And I just like to study the sport of running. I like to study human activity, like what makes people tick, why they do what they do. And over the last 4 years, I've learned a lot. And this is some of the things that I think are going on with a lot of runners out there. But this is from my experience, from my point of view, what I've experienced. And maybe you have experienced some of these things too. So let's explore. After you've built a strong aerobic base, meaning you've run for like, let's say 3 months using heart rate training, you figured out what your maximum heart rate is, you figured out all your zones of where you should be running, or maybe you're using the Maffetone method where you're doing 180 minus your age. You figure out if you're on medication, you do some subtracting, minusing, things like that, and you come up with your zone. So let's just say that it's 138 to 128. That's where you're going to run the majority of your runs. And let's say over the last 3 months, you've been able to get faster at that same low heart rate over that time, okay? Now, let's say on month 4 and month 5, you notice that you've hit a plateau and you're not improving. You're not seeing the results that you saw the first couple of months. One of the things that the body does is it adapts. It adapts to the training that you've been putting in. So after a period of time, your body turns around and goes, okay, guy, it's time for something else. Like, I've built up a base. This is great, but now it's time for something else. So what are you going to throw my way? So what you could do is you could add in one session, right? One run that's faster. Maybe it's a tempo run, right? So using your zones, you're calculating, your maximum heart rate, you use heart rate reserve, you use the Kavarvan method, and then boom. Okay, now you know where all of your zones are, right? You know how to train. And in doing so, you start to experiment with you, right? You're like, all right, tempo run, good, I'll do that. And then maybe the other number of runs in the week are still that slow running, that base building. You're turning out think of it like a car, right? So you've got this amazing car all built and you run into a situation where maybe you've got some tires that aren't fully inflated. And because those tires aren't fully inflated, driving down the highway, you're not getting the gas mileage that you were hoping for, and it's slow and stuff like that. It's kind of what I've experienced. So I've experienced that where on race day, you go to run and race, but your legs don't show up for you. You feel like you've forgotten how to run fast and you feel anxious. And you're like, how did this happen? I just wanted to run faster by running slow, but now in your head, you're like, I don't know if I can run fast. So then you try to run fast on race day, and then you realize that, you've got this a little bit of anxiety going on. You're worried because, you may get injured. And yeah, those are the feelings I went through, and I did pick up an injury. And so if you plan on racing, then you also have to make sure that you train your other system, right? You can build your aerobic base all you want, and you will get faster, but then you hit that plateau. And then you got to hit the easy button, right? And then you got to shift and add in the tempo. And then when you add that in slowly, right? Slowly add it in. Then what happens is you start looking at what you're doing and going, oh, hold on a second. This leads into my next point. You feel like your gait, your running form has changed since you were running slow all the time. And now you're running fast and you're like, okay, I don't know if I can continue to run slow anymore because I like how I feel when I run fast. So then you start running faster the majority of your runs, and then what happens, you pick up an injury. So what I would suggest, and this is an important one, is pay attention to this. Run slow, build the base, then add in some tempo runs. When you're doing that, start off like maybe just doing some strides, right? Maybe you run 150 meters, right? Maybe one side of a track, and just run a little faster, right? And then next week, right, you're gonna maybe add in a couple of those at the end of your easy run. Maybe you add 4, maybe you add 5, and over the weeks you kind of build up. I wouldn't just go out and drop on a dime and start running crazy fast, because that's how I picked up an injury. So take it slow, take it easy, and just know that as you build that base, as you build your aerobic base, then adding in these faster runs, now you're building your anaerobic base. And as you build this anaerobic base, it is different than your aerobic base. You've got two systems, and one burns sugar, one burns fat. They both contribute to when you're running a marathon or a 10K or a half marathon or whatever it is that you want. Each one is different. So you need to be able to make sure that you know what you're training for, because you have to put in that work to be able to run that race, but you're also needing to make sure that you're fueling your body for that particular race that you want to run. And that was where I ran into some problems, where I started to run faster, but I wasn't bringing in the carbohydrates that I needed because I was so used to running slow, and then I hit the wall. And when you hit the wall, it sucks. Your body literally just shuts down and you just can't run. You literally are forced to walk. There's just no two ways about it. I just tripped over something. So yeah, anyways, that was really important. Now, another big point is if your running form, if you try to change your running form too much, then you may pick up an injury. Your body is used to running the way that you run. So if you start to make too many changes and you're running longer, you're running all these races, but you're trying to adjust how you run, then that is maybe just as problematic as changing the running form or not changing the running form. So doing this very slowly and going to see a physio will really help. Maybe film yourself, right? From behind. Maybe get someone to ride a bike, film you as you run, see what's going on, film you from the side, see what's going on, just to make sure that, look, you're not heel striking, right? Because when you heel strike, a lot of force goes up into the knee. It's really disjointed. You can't pick up injuries. You could run into Achilles injuries. You could pick up like numerous things, right? Another reason why you may be running slow is because you may have reached a point where cardiac drift. And after a while of running, it's going to take more blood to flow, to pump through all your veins. And if you're not reaching the point of what your body needs to hydrate itself, then the blood gets sticky. And then it takes more pressure to push the blood through. And your heart rate starts to rise. And when your heart rate starts to rise, then you're running slow each and every kilometer as the run goes. You will reach a point where you end up walking and you're still at that same heart rate. That's normal. It's okay. You will be able to go further than you were before, but over time. Okay? So putting in the miles, 1 week after another, it compounds. You are able to go longer. You are able to go further. But note that there is cardiac drift that will happen. You can push it out, but eventually it will happen. One way or the other, it will happen. So staying on top of hydration and knowing that you can train your aerobic base to be able to go further, but to be able to go further, it is breaking down your fat to use as a fuel to go further. But you cannot neglect bringing in the electrolytes into your body, because your body is going to need that. And these are things that happen because I would go out for a run when I first started and I'd do like 10 kilometers. I'm like, I didn't need any water. That's good. But then all of a sudden now I'm going 11 kilometers, 12, 13. Maybe I've hit 7 miles, 8 miles, right? 10 miles. You're going further. You need to bring those fluids in. And it's really, really important. The fourth issue is when it comes to fueling your body and weight gain. Having extra weight on your body sucks. It's not great. I know this because I've packed on a little bit more than I would like to admit. But I am where I am, and that is my experience. However, if you can get your diet dialed in accordingly, if you know what your triggers are when it comes to eating. Food is a very social thing. I'm a very social individual. I meet with a lot of people every day and different parts. Sometimes I'm in the city, sometimes I'm in the country. Sometimes, you know, we're having donuts and we're having a coffee. And sometimes junk food comes in. Sometimes, you run into a situation where things get stressful. You're looking for that comfort food. So you bring it into your body and you eat it. Next thing you know, you realize that it's been about a couple of weeks and you're on the fast track of, becoming a real connoisseur of junk food. It happens. So you can sabotage your training specifically when you get older if you allow this to happen. Look, sugar is one thing, right? But then there's all the other crap that we bring in, right? Chips, saturated fat, like all the other unhealthy things into our body. You want to dial that in. You want to make sure that you're eating as clean as possible. If you're a meat eater, make sure, obviously you're bringing in your proteins, you're staying away from a lot of those simple carbohydrates, like pop is terrible. But then again, pop can be very helpful if you're in an ultra marathon. So there's different things that you can use in your training, but when you're not training, it doesn't mean that you can continue to consume all the stuff that you were bringing in before, right? Right now for me, while my foot heals, and it's probably about, I think it's around 90% right now, which is good. I've taken up cycling, but I don't cycle every day. So I need to make sure that I'm not consuming all of the foods that I was when I was running, because you want to make sure that you got to keep the weight down. Don't pack it on. It can happen. And that can make you run slower. I've seen it happen to me. I'm like, running with that extra weight sucks. It sucks on so many levels, but it is a reality. And that's okay. Because once you know what your triggers are, stay away from them. Once you know what your goal is of what you want to run, you can stay focused on that and just move your body, right? Like right now, I'm in between appointments and I'm just going for a walk on one of the trails that's kind of close to where my appointment is. And it's fantastic. It's absolutely beautiful out here. It's 20 degrees, but I'm making it happen just to make me feel like I've done something. I've got the exercise in. I'm still walking. I'm making sure my foot is okay. I am adjusting to the situation. Just don't allow the detraining to just spiral out of control, because then you're kind of getting close to restarting. And if you're a new runner, you will lose your aerobic system. You will lose your aerobic base faster than if you'd been running for many years. And that is a very frustrating point that a lot of runners face, specifically if you're new or if you're coming back for the first time after a long time. It's just the reality. Make sure you build that aerobic base, but then you have to adapt to some faster runs, because otherwise you're just going to end up being a slow runner, which is okay if that's what you don't mind. But if you want to see some potential and you want to be able to run a little faster with your friends, then yeah, that's also a good thing too. Like I always say, get out and run. See you on the next one, guys. Yeah, you better step into the light. Just give it a try. Think that it's time you let that spark out. You've been hiding in the shadows way too long.